Been daily driving the Phaeton the last 2 weeks now. So far, so good. I know the risks. We're gonna put that thing to the test because we're going to be daily driving it through the winter here in New Hampshire because we're putting that thing up. We're not gonna drive that in the salt. So welcome back, guys. We are still making a hard push on the Auto Union 1000 SP. Oh, excuse me, sir. The clock is ticking, guys. We are 4 weeks away from SEMA. I don't know what on earth I am doing. I don't even know why I'm filming this stuff. Like, I need to get to work. I need a team. Teams cost money. So in the last episode, we got the front halves of the wheel tubs designed, made, and installed in the 1000 SP. And I'm loving it. I really am loving how they sit. We've aired the car out. I don't know if I aired it out on camera. I can't remember now if we aired it out on camera. But we are not hitting the top of the wheel tub. The tires almost touch the rear window, but those wheel tubs are tall enough to where we've got our clearance now. And now, today, we are working on rear firewall. We're going to work on all of our sheet metal. But basically, I'm trying to come up with firewall sheet metal design. We're going to be closing up basically the cabin of the car from the engine bay, the new engine bay. This car was a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke front-wheel drive car, front-engined from the factory. It is now on a 59 Volkswagen Beetle pan with a Type 3 motor in the back. So that is now the engine bay. And what I think I want to do, and I thought I was going to cut all this out of here, the factory parcel shelf, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it because we're not restoring this car. We're not restoring the paint. I love the fact that there's dimple dies everywhere in this car. But since I want to leave these, I think what we're going to do is we're going to plate behind them and underneath this, right? And then I think what we're going to do is, I've already cut some of this cardboard. I think we're going to go at about a 45-degree angle, maybe a little less, right about there. I think we're gonna do that. But this will allow us room here for stuff. This would obviously be a great place to put the air management, like all the air management, like the air tank and all that. But I think the only thing I'm gonna put back here for the air management is our Airlift 3H manifold, right? This is the brain, the ECU, the computer essentially, and the air distribution valve body of our air in the air suspension system. And I think what I want to do is mount it right here, like right on the top in the middle of that angled piece that we might put there. So I'd like to have behind our seats, which are still off with my buddy Nick getting upholstered, Western Mass Waterworks, I want to have this be like a parcel shelf essentially. Well, my friend Rob from Dent Patrol shows up to work on the rear fender on the driver's side, which is, oh yeah, in that one, you can really see it. That's like the surface of the moon right there. If you guys remember, there was a giant dent right there that we knocked out, and that created a whole bunch of little craters. But even though Rob's been here working on this car before, he couldn't let this whole section rest. All right, so I've been working on some stuff off camera a little bit, and this is one of them. I wasn't gonna film this, but it's what I'm working on, so I might as well. I've cut my 18 gauge pieces of metal that will go back here, like so, and I'll end up plug welding that. But what I'm working on right now is this. As you can see, when I cut this out for our frame, essentially, I cut it away from the sides of the car. I cut it too short. I guesstimated where I was gonna run this part of the frame, but it's not close enough. It's got a little bit of a gap there. So I've made this little piece to just bridge that gap. And we're gonna put that right there. And basically what I'll be able to do is I'll drill a couple holes here and here, and we'll plug weld it right to this. I thought about going inside it, but it curls back. It's real tight up in there. You can't really get anything in there. So we'll just go over top of it. All right, so it took some time to bend up the other side, and we punched some pilots and drilled some plug weld holes. All right, guys, yet another late night in the shop. All right, so we've got the sheet metal in behind the dimple dies and paint matched. Now, obviously you can see my welds from the backside through the paint. And my thought was that that wouldn't be visible, that I'd ultimately, whatever I make for a firewall here would sit on this lip and ultimately cover that. But what I've just spent some time doing that I didn't film at all was I built a frame in here. So that piece of 1-inch square vertical and this 35-inch long piece of 1-inch square over to this vertical. So we didn't have those in there. We had that 1-inch vertical behind it that our wheel tub splits on. Like this wheel tub breaks on that back vertical. And I put this vertical in and this crossbar underneath this lip. So it's kind of tucked up into this lip right here because I want something sturdy to land our firewall on. And I think I want the firewall removable because our airbags are right here. Like literally they're right there. The top bolts for the bag and our fitting. It would just be so easy to replace or diagnose a leaky fitting from in here and not have to come in through the wheel well, since pulling the wheels off are still gonna be such a nightmare because we don't have a full radius arch in those rear fenders. We'd have access to our clutch slave cylinder, which will mount right in here somewhere. But now that we have this welded in, this helps block off our engine bay, essentially. Before, if we were gonna just block this off, it would leave this cavity inside here open to the engine bay. So that'll close that off. I'm gonna make a piece of sheet metal that'll basically cap this off. Since I had cut the factory parcel shelf back farther than this, we have a gap, which is why I made these to bridge the gap and also hold the parcel shelf down to its level. So this is level now. We're not gonna worry about too much of this stuff. You've seen the car. You've seen what this car looks like. It's literally a field car. So that's why I'm leaving the factory parcel shelf. I'm not worried that you can see the welds from the backside of where the dimple dies are. I don't care that this, is that, and that there's like half a dimple die right there. I don't care. I kind of like it. We're building structure within the ruins of this 1000 SP. All right, so I've kind of just had my head down and trying to come up with ideas for that rear firewall. So what I've done is taken some angle iron, 3/4 inch angle iron, and tack welded them in at the angle that I think I want the rear firewall. And we're ultimately going to mount the airlift 3H manifold to the center of this piece. And that's all of the air suspension management that I think I'm gonna have back here and visible. But what I did last night is started to finally cut some sheet metal, and I've got our bottom piece here, which will go here. I thought about making this out of like one piece, but it's just gonna be too difficult. So we've got our bottom piece made here, and as I've mentioned before, I think I want 2 separate covers here for our body mounts. And I'd rather not have seams here, but you know, maybe in the future we end up cutting some sort of rubber mat that goes over this. The next thing I need to do with this is cut this back just a little bit so it lands halfway on that brace, so that way our other piece we have here can also bridge that piece of frame. Also made the piece that I think will go right here. Essentially, just like that. I think it'll look fine once we paint it and get the manifold on it. But I'm getting a little brave about my bead roller, and I've only used it twice on just scrap pieces of metal to just use it. And I've never used the bead roller before, so I'm a little hesitant to do anything in this car with the time crunch we have, because I don't want to redo work. But I really want to put like 2 little pieces of like bead roll on either side of where the manifold's gonna go. So I might take this out and stencil in some guidelines to basically put some beads in this thing. And what I'm thinking of doing is basically emulating a couple beads that are in the front firewall here. So right here you see 2 beads on the firewall right there. And I'm thinking of doing something like that on that rear firewall piece. Just super simple. No one will ever see these probably, but knowing that they're here from the factory, it'd be cool to do something very similar on the rear firewall as well. Well, we are working on a new day here. My dad's here working on basically the trunk stop channel. I don't know if you guys have even noticed in previous episodes where the trunk shuts, like the rain tray, like where the actual trunk actually sits on, from here down is literally gone. Completely gone. And basically for transport, wherever I've taken the car before, I made a couple small little pieces, and actually one's broken off. I plug welded just a couple of pieces down here where the trunk can just sit against when we shut it, essentially. So while I'm still stuck inside the car for what feels like day 75 working on that rear firewall, he's putting the new Woodward Fab Strinker stretcher to work. Yeah, check this out. That's quite a piece. This is the actual like first piece that this shrinker stretcher has worked on. I've made a couple test pieces, but that's 18 gauge steel. It's got a curve in it. It's doing its job. And it's getting there. But what's cool about this shrinker stretcher, and it's not on flat ground right now, is it's foot operated. So it's got the shrinker bits and the stretcher bits that, or the jaws that you can just interchange, and you don't have to worry about using a lever to operate it. You can just use your foot, and you can use both hands on your material, which is really cool. So it's cool to actually put this thing to use on the 1000 SP finally. Well, what an incredible tool to be able to make something like that.
Yeah, I'll trim this, I'll cut this stuff out, but that's, I gotta bring that around a little more right there, bring this around a little more.
I just got a bunch of welding done on the rear firewall braces, but the camera battery died, so you didn't see any of that. But basically decided this is just where these are gonna stay. So might as well get to it, welded them in. I'm gonna smooth down the areas I welded that the sheet metal has to sit against, and then we'll locate where we're gonna put our riv nuts. Before I start drilling holes and pressing in riv nuts, I think I'm gonna get brave and use the bead roller for the first time on something that matters. We have good enough 18 gauge laying around, and this is a pretty square piece to where if I mess this up or it deforms it enough to not work, we can always cut a new one. So what I'm thinking of doing is we're looking at the back now, and ultimately the 3H manifold is going to go at the top. Just envision it the other side, right? I want to basically emulate these beads right here in the same angle. And so I want to press from the back so the bead actually protrudes into the firewall. So when you see it, you're not looking at the indent, but the protrusion. I think what I'm going to do is, since we're on the back, we need to be able to press from the back. So from inside the car, you'll see the actual bead protruding. Going to come up with a symmetrical angle. Should be the most simple line a bead roller can make, or a beginner like me can make. We're going to make 2 lines, and that's it. So I had some 1/2-inch dies in the bead roller. These ones here. Woodward supplied us with a handful of different dies, but I think what we're going to use is the 1/4-inch die. It's much tighter, smaller, and matches more. I think those are probably like a 6mm die that's in the car already. Since that's German, that would have been millimeter. We do have an 1/8-inch die as well, but 1/8 is real tight. So I ran a couple scraps through the 1/4-inch dies, this piece here, and I think I like it. And what's crazy is this is number 3 and 4 bead roll I've ever done, ever. So let's try to make this count in a car that's going to be at SEMA in just a couple weeks. I honestly think I did a good job. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Right?
Yeah.
I hear from so many of my friends being like, you ever look at bead rolls up close? They look like garbage. All of them. It doesn't matter where the car is or what.
Yeah.
So I was like really worried about.
Yeah. That looks good.
Oh, I really like that. If we start small.
Can't beat having the right tools.
I know. Please go easy on us at SEMA. If you see this car at SEMA, just go easy. Well, that is quite literally the easiest bead roll job you could ever do. Just 2 straight lines. But they are the first ones on something that matter on any of my cars. So I will take that. Pretty happy with how those came out and how they basically will emulate the ones in the front, which you'll never see. You know, if you don't watch this episode and you see the car in person, you'll probably never see the ones under the hood. But to me, it's kind of like reproducing what was already there, factory, kind of, or going for that overall style. All right, guys, next morning, my father and I ended here just a little bit after dark. Well, I stuck it out till about 9 or 10 o'clock, but my dad left a little after dark. This is what he worked on yesterday, and we put that new Woodward Fab shrinker stretcher to great work yesterday where that trunk channel came down and literally just disappeared. Like there was nothing left all the way around the bottom here. And when the trunk would shut before my ownership of it, it would just sit basically on the lip up here where that channel remained. Hardly. You can see he's drilled some holes in here. And what I'm gonna do now first thing is plug weld these in. And ultimately what I'll do is run some quarter round rubber weather stripping that's got adhesive on one or two sides and lay that in all the way around so the trunk can actually sit on that. So it gives it a little bit of spring and cushion. This poor trunk lid is just tender and it's my favorite part of the whole car. It still has the original Auto Union ring logo on it, which later became Audi. If you guys have been a part of this series since the beginning, you'll know that Auto Union was the predecessor to Audi, and it was 4 companies, and that's where the 4 rings come from. So the 4 rings are the 4 companies that built up Auto Union, and then Volkswagen purchased them in '69 and turned it into Audi, kept the badge. So let's fire up the welder, and yeah, we'll plug weld these in, and then we'll move back into the car and continue working on the rear firewall. All right, well, we got the trunk lip all plug welded in. It wasn't clean, as you could imagine, the amount of rust and rot that's in here, but got enough penetration to hold that thing in. Went over and cleaned it all up. But that's that done. That's just enough to be able to keep that trunk shut and from falling apart anymore. My father has since showed up and he's working on the front now. Got some of the side pieces cut that are gonna cover this piece here and that piece in there. And I've painted in there because we're about to plug weld some sheet metal over that. So I've sprayed just some black paint in there just so that's covered. You know, it's not raw metal. I've got the left side here. As you can see, it took a while to trim and get to the appropriate shape. Thought is this here will fit just like that and basically cover that up, and we'll plug weld it and then smooth it all out again. But since there's going to be a cavity in there that's now painted, I think I want to put a dimple die right there in the center, since we've left the factory parcel shelf with all of the factory dimple dies. Close call, Silas. All right, well, while my father continues to work on the front half of the 1000 SP, I've got our holes located and drilled for the side plates on the rear firewall, which this is another first for any car that I've ever quote unquote built or put together. I've never used dimple dies in anything before. So much like those first 2 bead rolls being the first beads I've ever put in anything on the 1000 SP out of any car, we're also doing another first. And I feel like this one's opening Pandora's box. I feel like I'm gonna dimple die everything from here on out. Yeah. I did one test. This was my test piece. This is the first time I'd ever used. Oh, I'd used the metal brake before, but first bead rolls and first dimple die.
Well, let's put some little ones in this.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a 1/2-inch die. From Woodward, I've got the full set. We've got the 1/2-inch die all the way to the 3-inch die. So we can hide them anywhere, which they're already hiding in that car in places you didn't know existed. So I've decided to go with an 1.25 inch dimple die and just one right in the middle where that cavity is. So let's take our 1.25 inch dimple die. Now I know I could probably just hammer this with a mallet and it would be fine because it's an 18 gauge piece of metal we're putting it in. But since we've got our shot press set up right here, let's just use that to kind of control our dimple die. All right, well, we've got our dimple dies, or our holes and dimple dies all set in these plates. This is the beginning of wanting to dimple die literally everything. Because I've already placed these back in the car to just make sure my holes landed inside the cavity of the frame pieces, and they do. Luckily, everything's where we need them to be. But it just makes it look that much better. So here in the car, just like so. Yeah, really into that. Almost wish we had room for one down here too, but we've got that bar that comes in here. We don't quite have enough room for two, but since these will also be visible, I think putting one in each of those was a really cool idea. So just tack welded up a piece that my dad's working on for the Napoleon hat here. And yet again, the shrinker stretcher is doing some incredible work. You can see the lip that he's made with a 90-degree bend in it that's going up and over the Napoleon hat where we're going to build the front firewall. And that's ultimately 3 pieces. He made his like 45-degree bend over the top and then 2 straights. I knew that tool would come in handy sooner or later.
Oh,
Yeah, look at that.
yeah.
I'm bending it.
And I don't even know what I'm doing.
That makes 2 of us.
Every day's a school day.
Yeah, it certainly is. Caught the shop foreman sleeping on the job. So we are ready to weld these end caps in. I've come out here and used some of my weld through primer. Since these are going to be blocking off a cavity of air and not just metal to metal contact, I wanted to make sure I sprayed some of that on the inside. So when we plug weld them in, we won't get any disruption or serious disruption in our weld if I just painted it. What are you doing, bud? The foreman's long past retirement. Just give it up, bud. Cash in the pension. So I just spent a whole bunch of time working on grinding everything smooth to match the 1-inch square frame rail that comes up off the body mount. That side as well, really happy with that. Post dinner, after dark, my dad's still working on the front firewall. So he's got a piece in now. And then the piece he's just cut is gonna basically go to the Napoleon hat that's in the beetle pan.
Bend a 90 here to go underneath that shelf.
So yeah, he's been on that all day. Just getting a plan together is what takes the longest. I mean, even just what you're looking at for framework took me days to figure out. But pretty stoked on how that's coming together. We're gonna make a removable plate cover here so we can get to my pedal cluster reservoirs, my brake and clutch master reservoirs. The foreman has called it quits. He's gone. He's in the house sleeping now. He quit. No shop foreman on the 3rd shift. We are actually almost starting the 3rd shift here. Yeah, it's a good lip too. It's like 1.5 inches.
Yeah, hopefully I got it the right height.
Yeah, yeah.
So that it fits. Makes a nice cut, doesn't it? Nice.
Yeah,
sliver.
no, it's crazy. I don't know. How did I exist without one? You'd be cutting with an angle grinder, melting it too at the same time,
Yeah.
throwing sparks everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, the front firewall has 2 bead rolls in it now. This is the side you'll see from inside the cabin of the car, and then this is the side that you won't really see from under the hood. And went ahead and just added another weld to the lip that we're ultimately plug welding to this. So I drilled my holes for that, and then we'll get that fit in the car as 2 different pieces, clamp it all together, and then just weld it in the car. Pretty stoked on having that bead roller put to work on the car. There's so much more to learn with it, but it's cool to start small, and it's relevant little pieces like that too. They make the pieces stronger, but also make it look a little bit more professional. Well, my father's in the engine bay, or the former engine bay, working on the firewall, and you can see here, pretty stoked on the 2 bead rolls we put in that firewall. You'll be able to see it from here in the cabin. Love how that idea is coming together and that overall design. So I am working on the back here. I feel like this has been a perpetual project, but I got the end cap pieces cut, so these are nice and tight and fitted to the not quite straight line of my wheel tubs, and this side as well fit the way I really want it to. I totally didn't even take into consideration where I want to bolt these panels down on their crossbars, support parts of the frame. I can't get the riv nut tool into some of these areas where I really want to put or need fasteners. Like in this corner, up in these corners, between this and a ratchet, we're gonna go in and thread all of our holes directly right into the frame so we can then thread in our M5 hardware. And I'm looking at this big piece on the bottom here. I think we're gonna put a bead roll here and here. And that will kind of like create this symmetrical vision shape between the 2 of them. All right, so I just realized that where I scribed where I want my bead rolls, they're on the wrong side because I want the bead to protrude because we've got frame floors, like we've got framing that this is going to sit flat on. So if we bead roll down, it will disrupt how flat this will lay on the frame. And since the back firewall is protruding with the bead, I want to emulate that here too. So since I've scribed on the top side, we need the press from the back. So we've got a little pretty basic like jig set up to get the angle and the right location set up on the back side. And all I'm going to do from here is measure in to our start point and measure up to our other start point. And we'll do the same over there. So now we'll flip it over and we'll try to best match that line on the back side. This was what I was thinking, was lining up the beads on the back part to the beads on the bottom. And that came out far better than I expected it to, being a rookie with a bead roller. Because this is a separate sheet from this piece, they didn't fit perfectly together, so we'd have a gap. And not knowing how to really close that up, decided to weld in this flat stock in between all of my braces here and then smooth everything out. So ultimately this now butts to the bottom of the frame that the bottom sheet metal sits against. And when this goes in, that'll close up completely. So once we mount these down with hardware, we've got it blocked off completely. All right, so here's a look at what my father's been working on for the front firewall, but also false floor or real floor in here. So what we have yet to do is plug weld the actual firewall that goes over the Napoleon hat to our piece that goes underneath the firewall of the 1000 SP body. So these are two different pieces. There's a third piece that goes over the Napoleon hat that we'll plug weld, and we'll weld that. What we've done from here is raise up to ultimately build our floor, and he's got this piece made too. The fuel cell is gonna go over top of this. And that's where that crimp tool came in handy here, so we can overlap and we have the same plane for a floor. Fuel cell's gonna go here, so we still need to drill some holes for our riv nuts that are underneath. But here's where he's got a lot of the technical work done for the steering column and also around the braces for the body mounts as well. Okay, so another day, still working on this rear firewall. So much to do, so much going on. We have the bottom and the back mounted. We've got those bolted in. I need to get these parts of the firewall made, since this too goes to the engine bay and ultimately outside. So I'm working on this. I think I'm gonna do 3 pieces. We'll do 1, 2, and 3. And last night I spent some time working on this one because I wanna cover our shift coupler here, our shift rod to our hockey stick. And I think what I'll do is I'll make one piece that'll cover our cross member and come out here. So I went to the computer to design a radius so I don't have to hack it up with the angle grinder or our shears. We can actually have like a nice CNC cut radius. So I just went to the laser machine and cut one out of poster board to test fit, make sure it looks good. I think it does. And now I'm working on making some lips, flanges, that'll just come down and mount to the bottom, and then we can make some flat pieces to meet them. So this here's the piece I cut on the laser machine. Basically cut it as flat, put it in the metal brake, and bent it at 90 degrees. And even that metal brake works well for bending cardboard and poster board. You know exactly where you're gonna ultimately bend your metal. But this here is what I'm thinking. I'm gonna go right there, ultimately. So we'll put a 90-degree bend in it, and then we'll meet both sides of it with our flanges that go down the outriggers of the pan to our sills of the body. So I made our 24-inch, 1-inch by 1-inch angle out of our 18 gauge. And these are ultimately gonna be the bottom of our last piece to the rear firewall here. And they're gonna go right here, like so, and ultimately get put in the shrinker stretcher. We're gonna shrink that up so that will help contour to our floor and come up to our main centerpiece here. Since we've got that one in now, we're working on the passenger side here, and ultimately we've got the curve that we need to come off our flat from our floor extension here and head up to the center of the tunnel here. So I've trimmed this back. We'll butt that up. Got to do a little bit more trimming. And then we'll trim up here too, just like we did on this side, to ultimately bring our sheet down to create the wall. Got to do the same here, but we've got that bend basically sorted out where we need it. All right, well, we're working on the bottom parts of the rear firewall finally. I was at an impasse, wasn't sure if I really wanted to risk putting some bead rolls in these pieces, but there's a lot of open flat space here, so I feel like we really needed it. I made the passenger side first. They're not perfectly symmetrical, just because of all the custom work that we've done inside the car, so they're a little bit different. They're not perfectly the same. So we couldn't have cut this out of CAD and then just mirrored the files. So they're handmade. What I did first on this one was set up where all my plug weld holes were gonna be, and then laid out my design for where the two bead rolls were gonna be, so they wouldn't interfere. And as the last few pieces, bead rolled it from the back. So we've got our relief on the front, but what that also allows is this plate to lay flat against the bracing we're gonna plug weld it to, where the bead won't lift it away. All right, well, we're out here finally getting the inside of our bottom firewall pieces primered. This here is a weldable weld-through primer. This here I try to use every time metal's going to be facing more metal that's welded together. So basically that'll help any corrosion, it won't rust, but also you can weld to it. If you don't have any of this or you haven't used it before, I put a link in the video's description below where you can buy some right on Amazon. I think they're like $30 a can. Sounds expensive compared to spray paint, but this is stuff that you can weld. All right, another day, another morning. My father's here again. Been doing like 12 hours a day with me the last, I don't know, week it seems like. And then I continue on into the night until I can't go any further. But he's still working under the hood. Excited to show you guys what we're doing there. That'll probably bleed over into the next episode. What I'm most stoked about right now is I finally have most, it's not totally done, of the rear firewall. Last night, I don't even think I filmed any of it. I just got right to work. But we got our bead rolled lower panels in. We plug welded everything up, ground it all down, smoothed it all out. I even welded up the seams between the middle piece and the side pieces. So it's all just one piece now. It's welded to the lips down here at the bottom. Probably what I'll do is I'm gonna weld up these seams from these flanges to this base once we get the body off the pan next, just because this is metal here too, and if I get decent penetration, it might just, you know, I'll just wait until this is up again. We'll weld these up. I don't have any of the hardware in right now on this bottom piece. We have yet to paint it all. I'm gonna use a sound deadening aerosol, like the boom mat stuff, up underneath these panels and on the inside of these. On the engine bay side, I thought about using like something like a Dynamat or something, and maybe in the future we will. But for right now, with the time we have, we're under 3 weeks now. As I'm recording this, it's Thursday, the something of October, and we're under 3 weeks before this car leaves, which is just demoralizing in a way. Huge steps. Getting this done was huge. I'm super happy with how it came out. I had no idea what it was going to look like or what I was going to do. The wheel tubs were super daunting and intimidating. Just everything I'd done with the frame in the beginning leading up to this point was kind of daunting, not knowing what it was going to look like or if it was going to work. Still got to get some paint on it, get the final bolts in. But as we get this thing ready for SEMA, you will see that part of it, because obviously we're trying our best to film and document all of this. So by the time this car is ready to get on the transport, hopefully all that's done. Grateful to have my dad here working on the front and anywhere else really for that matter. We've done a lot up front in the time that we've been working on the back here too. So that'll bleed over into the next episode. My buddy Robbie is still helping with some 3D printing of some ABS plastics parts here and there, just small aesthetic stuff. It's all hands on deck, even though it's just my dad and I, right, really. So, and huge thanks to my friend Rob and Steve who have come over and helped with a lot of the dents and straightening the front end and stuff. That's all happened behind the scenes too. Yeah, that's it for this episode. Really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for all of the support. Need it right now for sure. We will see you guys in the next episode.